3 weeks before our wedding, I found out my fiancée Kate was sleeping with my cousin. I didn't cancel the wedding. Not yet. There are moments in life that punch you in the gut so hard, they steal your breath and your bearings. For me, that moment came on a chilly Thursday evening, exactly 21 days before my wedding. The day had started like any other. I remember it clearly, because in hindsight, the ordinary texture of it makes the ending feel like whiplash. I had eggs and toast for breakfast, kissed Kate goodbye on my way out, and even sent her a picture of the wedding invitation samples I was looking at during lunch. She replied with a heart emoji. I smiled at it. Fool. The thing about betrayal is that it's rarely sudden. It's a slow leak. At first, you barely notice the damp. But over time, the rot sets in, and by the time the ceiling collapses, you're already sleeping under it. Kate had been acting a little off for months, but nothing concrete. Just small things. The kind of things that, at the time, I chalked up to wedding stress or work pressure. Her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, now stayed glued to her hand like an extension of her body. She started taking calls on the balcony, showering with her phone on Do Not Disturb, changing passwords. I noticed all of it. I also told myself not to become one of those paranoid, possessive guys. Trust, I believed, was the foundation of everything. That Thursday, I got off work early. The weather was turning, and I'd been meaning to surprise Kate with dinner and some quiet time, just the two of us. The wedding had become a machine with 1,000 moving parts, and we hadn't really had a moment to breathe. I stopped by her favorite Thai place on the way home and picked up the pad see ew she loved. I even grabbed her favorite wine. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. Nothing strange. We lived in a busy neighborhood. People visited. But then I walked inside. Silence. No TV. No music. Just silence, and the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, fresh, as if she just walked through the room. I called out her name, Kate. No response. I set the food down, stepped out of my shoes, and was halfway to the hallway when I heard it. Laughter. It came from upstairs. Her laughter, light and teasing, mixed with a man's voice, low and smug. My stomach flipped. I moved quietly, stepping carefully up each stair. Something inside me already knew. Call it instinct, call it dread. But my heart was pounding. I didn't want to see. I didn't want it to be what I feared. But I kept walking. Our guest room door was cracked open. Just enough. And from that sliver, I saw everything I needed. Kate, my fiancée, sitting cross-legged on the bed, her shoulders bare, giggling like a teenager. And my cousin Alex, shirtless, reclining beside her like he belonged there. She said something I couldn't make out, but he laughed and kissed her shoulder. She pushed him playfully, and they collapsed into each other again. I didn't burst in. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I turned, walked back down the stairs. Out the door. I got into my car, pulled onto the street, and parked 2 blocks away, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. I stayed there for a long time, my mind racing but strangely calm. The kind of calm that isn't peace, it's shock, frozen disbelief wrapped in anger. Kate and Alex. Of all people. My cousin. The guy who stood beside me when I bought my first car. The guy who'd be standing next to me as best man in just 3 weeks. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I started thinking. Not about calling off the wedding. No. Not yet. Something deeper had settled into my chest. A need to understand. To unravel how long this had been going on, how deep the betrayal went. I drove to my friend Leo's place. He'd been my closest friend since college. Level-headed, brutally honest. When I walked in, I must have looked like a ghost. What happened? He asked. I told him everything. His face went pale. Man, are you sure? I nodded. Saw it with my own eyes. He exhaled. What now? I sat on his couch, leaned forward, and whispered, I'm going to let the wedding happen. He blinked. What? I want them to think I don't know. I want her to plan every detail. The flowers. The dress. The guest list. I want her to stand there and write her vows. You're serious? I nodded. And then I'm going to ruin her. Publicly. With evidence. No shouting. No violence. Just truth, delivered perfectly. Leo looked at me like he didn't recognize me for a second. And maybe I didn't either. But I wasn't broken. I was focused. Over the next few days, I started putting pieces together. Kate's phone records, which I quietly accessed from our shared provider login. Hotel receipts she'd kept in the kitchen drawer, thinking they were safe. Messages she forgot to delete from her cloud account. Photos. I didn't have to dig deep. The arrogance of cheaters, I learned, is in their carelessness. They think they'll never be caught. I found pictures of the two of them at a hotel out of town on a weekend when Kate told me she was visiting her sister. Messages with timestamps that matched the night she claimed she was working late. A receipt for lingerie from a boutique I'd never heard of. And just like that, the image of our relationship, perfect, happy, stable, crumbled. The worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was how little she thought of me. How easily she lied, looked me in the eye, and kissed me goodnight after being with him. I played my part flawlessly. At home, I asked about the florist, helped finalize the menu, complimented her on her taste when she showed me the table settings. We laughed. We held hands. We acted like everything was perfect. Inside, I was documenting, planning. I backed up everything: emails, screenshots, voicemails. I had a folder labeled Freedom on my laptop. Leo helped me put together a short video, a simple slideshow of the evidence. Nothing graphic, just enough to make everything unmistakably clear. Meanwhile, I watched Kate. She had no idea. She'd smile at me while sending texts, likely to Alex. She'd take longer to come home, blaming traffic or meetings. I even overheard her telling her friend over the phone, "It's just a little fling. I love Mark, but I need excitement before I settle." That one burned. Mark. That's me. She loved me, but needed excitement. Like I was some beige wall she'd grown tired of staring at. 3 weeks out. Then 2. We met with the officiant, the caterer, her bridesmaids. My parents had no clue. Hers were overjoyed. Everyone thought we were the dream couple. And all the while, I smiled. I counted down the days. Not to my wedding. To her reckoning. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I sat alone in our bedroom while Kate was in the bath. I looked at the ring I'd bought her, custom-made, engraved on the inside. It cost me 2 months' salary. I dropped it in my drawer. I wasn't going to need it. The hardest part of betrayal isn't the lie. It's pretending you never heard it. That morning, after I caught Kate and Alex in the guest room, I sat in my car for 2 hours. No music. No calls. Just me and the silence pressing in like a vice. When I finally walked back into the house, I did something I didn't expect. I smiled. Kate was in the kitchen wearing one of my hoodies, humming to herself, scrambling eggs. She looked up and said, "Oh, you're back early. Everything okay?" My first test. I looked her in the eyes, those same eyes that had just seen a man who wasn't me in ways I couldn't unsee, and nodded. "Yeah, just got off early. Figured I'd come home and surprise you." And that's when I knew. She bought it. Right there, she leaned over, kissed my cheek, and turned back to the stove, as if nothing had happened. No guilt. No second glance. That was the first moment I truly realized who she was. From that moment forward, I played my role like it was the lead in a Broadway play. Loving fiancé. Dutiful partner. Every time she looked at me, I smiled like I had no clue. Every dinner we shared, every plan we made for the wedding, I leaned into it all. Meanwhile, beneath the surface, I was building a war chest of evidence and a strategy that would flip her perfect day upside down. Let me tell you something about deception. It takes energy. Every lie you tell is another plate you have to keep spinning. And Kate? She was spinning plates like a circus act. Sooner or later, one would fall. I just had to be there when it did. The first trap. 2 days after the discovery, I set up a second cloud backup for her phone. Most people don't realize how easily someone can mirror data if they're logged in under the same Apple ID. She thought she was clever, hiding messages in a separate chat app. She wasn't. I saw everything. Every flirtatious emoji. Every crude joke. Every mention of our secret. But I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I started building a timeline. There was the weekend she visited her sister in Denver. That turned out to be a romantic cabin rental 2 hours away with Alex. I found photos in her deleted folder, ones she thought were gone. I saved them all. Another time, she said she was working late on a pitch for her firm's new client. I pulled up credit card receipts from a sushi bar on the other side of town. 2 entrees. 1 dessert. 1 very expensive bottle of sake. The thing about Kate is, she never once thought I was the kind of guy who paid attention. I was the safe man. The guy she could marry for stability while chasing thrills on the side. She miscalculated. Big time. The wedding planner. If you want to see a woman at her most excited and most exposed, give her control over her dream wedding. Kate threw herself into the planning like a general preparing for battle. Pinterest boards. Vendor meetings. Color palettes. Swatches. I played along. I nodded when she showed me different types of peonies. I held her hand through awkward seating chart conversations. The irony? She was building her own stage. I just made sure the lights were bright enough for everyone to see what she really was. We had weekly check-ins with the wedding planner, Mia. Sweet girl. Young, but driven. The kind who took notes on a tablet and remembered every detail you ever mentioned. Kate adored her. And because Mia liked me, because I always showed up on time, took notes, asked thoughtful questions, I gained a new ally. At our second meeting, Kate excused herself to take a call. I leaned over and said, "Hey, Mia, can I ask you something off the record?" She looked up, curious. "Sure. If someone wanted to play a video during a rehearsal dinner, something really personal, do you know who I could talk to about AV setup?" Her eyes lit up. "Absolutely. I can get you in touch with our tech vendor. Just shoot me the file a few days early and I'll make sure it runs smoothly." "What's the video?" I smiled. "You'll see. Fake calm, real storm." By week 2, the emotional exhaustion was kicking in. Pretending is exhausting. I'd wake up, roll over, and see her beside me, peaceful, glowing, oblivious. And part of me would ache. Not for her. For the man I used to be. The one who believed in her. The one who thought she was forever. I started sleeping less. Waking up early. Going for runs even though I hated running. It was the only time my mind stopped racing. Leo noticed. "You look like hell, man," he said one morning over coffee. I shrugged. "You'd look worse if you were living with a snake." "You sure you still want to go through with this?" he asked. I stared at my cup. I need her to feel what I felt. I want her to see everyone's eyes when they watch the video. I want her to understand she burned down something that could have lasted forever. Leo nodded slowly. "Just don't lose yourself in it." That was the challenge, wasn't it? Holding on to who I was while preparing to detonate everything she built. My parents, her lies. One Sunday, we had brunch with my parents. They adored Kate. They thought she was sunshine in a bottle. She played her part perfectly, complimenting my mom's casserole, laughing at my dad's jokes. "I can't believe how lucky I am," she said at one point, squeezing my hand under the table. I smiled. So did my mom. Later, as we were leaving, my dad pulled me aside. "She really is something, huh?" I nodded. "Yeah, she is." It hurt, lying to them. But I couldn't tell them yet. Not until it was too late for her to run. Freedom folder. I renamed the folder. Originally, it was called Evidence. But that felt too legalistic. So I changed it to Freedom. Inside, screenshots, messages, receipts, photos, even a voice recording of a conversation between Kate and her maid of honor. They talked about how wild the bachelorette trip would be. How Kate didn't want a boring honeymoon with just one man. The maid of honor laughed. "Mark doesn't need to know. He's such a puppy dog." Kate replied, "That's why I picked him." That one nearly made me flip the table. Instead, I added it to the timeline. Rehearsal invitations. I made a second set of invites. Not for the wedding. For the rehearsal dinner. They were digital. Clean. Discreet. I included an RSVP link that led to a simple form. What no one knew is that the final slide of the dinner's agenda included a placeholder for a special message from the groom. I tested the video 10 times. It started with footage of Kate and Alex in the hotel lobby, holding hands. Then a timestamped screen recording of their messages. Finally, a slideshow of receipts, audio clips, and one single sentence at the end. "This is who she really is. I deserve better." We all do. Fade to black. Every time she smiled at me after that night, it felt like watching a movie where you already know the twist. She'd lean in, kiss my cheek, run her fingers down my arm and ask, "Are you sure you're not getting cold feet?" And I'd smile back, every time, and say something like, "Only about my tux." Or, "Just excited to see you walk down the aisle." But inside, I wasn't nervous. I was boiling. Not with rage, at least. Not in the way most people imagine. It was more refined than that. Cold, calm, corrosive. Like acid running just under the surface. I had passed the point of heartbreak. What I was feeling now was control. A steady, razor-sharp focus. Kate wasn't just a cheater. She was a performer. A master of optics. She knew when to laugh, when to cry. How to tilt her head just enough to look bashful. She crafted an image of herself so carefully, I had fallen for it like everyone else. But I was starting to see the cracks. And now I couldn't unsee them. The unmasking. It started with a flash drive. Not mine, hers. One night she was out, late with a friend, and I couldn't help myself. I looked through the drawer of her desk, The one she always kept locked until recently when she started trusting that I never checked it. Inside, receipts, notebooks, random post-it notes. But beneath it all was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. There were folders, some with names like wedding stuff, and others that made my blood run cold. One was titled Escape Fund. Inside, spreadsheets. Bank transfers to an account I didn't know about. Withdrawals in small amounts, spaced out, all neatly documented. Notes beside each, from grocery refund, petty cash, gym overcharge. She was siphoning money. Not a lot, but enough that it added up. Another folder, backup plan. It had an apartment listing, lease terms, even a job application she submitted to a boutique firm in another state. She was preparing to leave, but not until after the wedding. Not until after she locked in my benefits, the social clout, the wedding gifts, the image. Then she'd vanish, probably with Alex in tow. Or maybe she'd drop him too. Who knows? She wasn't just lying to me. She was using me. The real Kate. I started rewatching our relationship like a documentary, replaying key moments in my head, this time with new eyes. There was the Christmas she surprised me with a ski trip I never asked for. She made a huge deal about it, how thoughtful it was, how hard she worked to plan it. What I now realized, she spent half that trip texting someone. She said it was work, but I remembered the way she'd smirk at her phone, turning away when I asked what was funny. There was the time I got food poisoning and she was weirdly absent, blaming a girls' night. And the business conference I couldn't attend where she came back with a tan even though the weather was cloudy the whole weekend. These weren't red flags at the time. But now? They looked like neon signs with arrows pointing straight at her double life. Kate didn't cheat because she was unfulfilled. She cheated because she could. Because it made her feel powerful. I once heard a quote. Some people break things just to feel the thrill of being the one who held the hammer. That was Kate. Friendly fire. I started testing my theory discreetly. I brought up Alex one night at dinner. He called me today, I said casually, pushing around my pasta. Said he was planning something for my bachelor party. You two still talk. She froze, just for a second. It was the kind of hesitation most wouldn't notice. But I did. Then she laughed. Oh yeah, I texted him a few days ago. He was asking about venues. You know how clueless he is without you. I nodded. Right. I watched her eyes. She wasn't nervous. She was rehearsed. Later, I texted Alex. Something simple, thinking of switching best men. You cool with that? He replied in under a minute. Why? Something wrong. I waited, then replied, just a feeling. He didn't text back. Not for 3 hours. Then, whatever you need, man. I got your back. It was almost funny. 2 performers, both playing me, unaware the curtain was already down. The maid of honor. Her name was Jessica. Kate's best friend since college. The kind of woman who drank green juice in the morning and wine by the bottle at night. I never liked her. Too loud, too nosy. But now? She was a goldmine. One afternoon, I accidentally left my phone on the kitchen counter with the voice memo app running. Then I said I had a conference call and stepped into the next room, but stayed close enough to listen through the thin walls. Jessica showed up, wine in hand. They talked wedding stuff at first. Flowers. Seating. They say betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the people you trust. The ones you let in. The ones you love. And as I sat in my car one night, reading through Kate's group chats, I realized the noose wasn't just around my neck. It had been tied by hands I once shook, hands I once clapped over beers, hands that had helped me move into this house. It started with Chloe. She was one of Kate's closest friends, someone I'd always considered decent. She came over for dinner, brought us wine, laughed at my dumb jokes. She even cried when we got engaged. Or so I thought. I was going through Kate's backup chat data, an archive she forgot about in the rush of syncing to her new phone, when I saw Chloe's name pop up again and again. The messages were casual at first, like any between friends. But then came a message from Kate, 3 months before our engagement. Alex is addictive, she wrote. Chloe's reply. Girl, I told you. Honestly, just make sure you're careful. Mark sweet, but so slow. I read that line 3 times. Slow. That's how they saw me. A week later, another message. He wants to propose. I think he's planning something for October. Chloe, LOL you called it. Just say yes and lock it down. No shame in having both. 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 I whispered the word out loud, like I was testing its shape in my mouth. It sounded sharp, like broken glass. They knew. She knew. And Chloe didn't just tolerate it, she encouraged it. I sat back and stared at the ceiling of my car. It was almost too absurd to process. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a performance, and half the audience was clapping backstage. It was social betrayal on a level I never thought I'd experience. And worse still, they all acted like my friends. Smiling, toasting, hugging, pretending. I started to list names. Chloe, Alex, obviously. Jason, he'd been Kate's coworker and someone I'd gone golfing with twice. I remembered now how he once made a weird joke about open relationships and winked at Kate like it was their inside joke. At the time, I'd laughed it off. God, how blind I'd been. The deeper I dug, the more the web unraveled. I found out there had been a party, some friend of a friend's housewarming, where Kate and Alex showed up together, uninvited. Chloe was there. So were two other friends of mine, and not one of them told me. There were photos. Nothing overt, nothing scandalous. But Kate's body language with Alex was intimate in a way that only stands out when you already know the truth. A hand on his chest. Her eyes lingering too long. Everyone in that room must have seen it. And no one said a word to me. I remembered how at that time, Alex had texted me the next morning. Yo, party last night was wild. You should have come. He knew I wasn't invited. He didn't want me there. Because I would have seen it. The humiliation wasn't just from being cheated on. It was from being made the fool. My own cousin. My fiancée. Her friends. Even mine. I'd been the unwitting actor in their play, the guy delivering earnest lines while the audience held back laughter. The anger I felt wasn't fire. It was ice. Cold and slow and heavy. I stopped talking to most of our mutual friends. Casually at first. Just a little distance. A text I didn't reply to. A group chat I muted. I wanted to see who noticed. Who asked questions. Most didn't. The ones who did. I gave vague answers. I was watching them now, studying every word. Waiting for cracks. Kate noticed. You okay? She asked one night, curled up on the couch in one of my sweatshirts. You've been kind of quiet lately. I'm just tired, I said. This wedding stuff, it's a lot. She kissed my cheek and nestled closer. I can't wait till it's all over. Just you and me. Somewhere far away. I smiled. Yeah, just you and me. It was the first time I realized how much she believed her own lies. She had no idea I'd seen behind the curtain, that I had already pulled the wires, that the lights were about to go out. I spent that weekend finalizing the pieces. I booked a private meeting room at the venue next door to our rehearsal dinner spot. I ordered small printed cards, just a white background with one black line of text, "Truth will be served." I slipped them into the invitation envelopes of 10 carefully selected guests. People who mattered. People who trusted me. I booked a therapy session. I needed to talk, but not to friends. Not anymore. I sat across from a man named James, older, quiet, a former soldier turned counselor. I told him the whole story. He didn't interrupt, just listened. At the end, he leaned back and asked, "What's your goal?" "I want her to feel it," I said. "Not just her. All of them." He nodded slowly. "Then make sure you leave with your soul intact. Justice without self-respect is just revenge." That sat with me. It haunted me a little, but not enough to change course. I had one last step before the dinner, a test. I called Alex. It rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, man. What's up?" "I've been thinking," I said, voice steady. "You free for a beer this week? Just the two of us." A pause. Just long enough to confirm the suspicion. Yeah, sure. "Thursday." "Perfect," I said. We met at a place downtown. A little bar we used to hit in college. He was nervous, I could tell. He tried to hide it, but his hands tapped the table too often, and he ordered a drink before I even sat down. We talked small things first. Football. Work. His new watch. Then I leaned in. "So, anything you want to tell me?" His eyes darted. "Like what?" "I don't know," I said, swirling my drink. "Secrets. Regrets. Stuff you maybe want to get off your chest before I tie the knot." He laughed. Forced. Too fast. "Nah, man. You're solid." "Kate's lucky." I held his gaze for a full 5 seconds. Long enough to make him squirm. Then I smiled. Just checking. That was all I needed. He was going to lie till the very end. Perfect. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Kate was buzzing with excitement. She showed me her final vows, handwritten in a leather-bound journal. She read a line out loud. "I love you because you see me, not who I pretend to be, but who I really am." I almost choked. She looked at me. Too cheesy. I shook my head. No, it's perfect. And it was. Because in less than 24 hours, she was going to be seen for exactly who she really was. Not by me, by everyone. And the truth? It was going to be beautiful. They say people wear masks, but Kate didn't just wear one, she built an entire wardrobe of them. In the morning, she was the attentive fiancée, brewing my coffee just right and kissing my cheek before I left for work. By afternoon, she was planning her meetings and appointments. And by night, she'd be texting on the couch beside me, swiping her thumb across the screen with just a bit too much urgency when I walked into the room. I had memorized her lies. Not just what she said, but how she said it. There was a rhythm to it, a pattern. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I'd ask, "What time's your fitting?" And she'd answer with one quick sentence, one smile, and a touch on the arm. That touch, always the closer. A distraction. But now I was watching closely, timing her answers, reading her micro-expressions, tracking inconsistencies. And once you know someone is lying to you, every conversation becomes a chess match. The scary part wasn't how easily she lied. It was how natural she made it look. Kate lived 2 lives, but only one of them had an expiration date. Every day, I was erasing myself from the life we built. Quietly, carefully. No drama. I called my lawyer and changed the terms on my accounts. Moved money. Reassigned beneficiaries. I was subtle, just in case she ever checked. I even started keeping a second phone, hidden in the spare tire compartment in my trunk, where I stored all backups of the files I'd collected. That phone never connected to our home Wi-Fi. It stayed offline unless I needed it. No traces. Meanwhile, I let Kate plan the honeymoon. She wanted Bali. A 2-week stay in a villa with a private pool, candlelit dinners on the beach, a sunset ceremony of some kind. She described it all with that glowing look, like this was her dream, and I was lucky enough to be included. I played along, told her I couldn't wait. She'd lie in bed with her laptop, scrolling through photos of tropical beaches while texting Alex under the covers. She thought I didn't see, but I saw everything. Every flick of her fingers, every glance at the clock when it was time for his message. Sometimes, late at night, I would lie there with my eyes closed and just listen to the silence. And I'd think, this was almost my life. She was almost my wife. I almost didn't find out. The more I watched her, the more I realized how far she was willing to go to maintain the charade. She kept up her tone with everyone. Her parents, my parents, friends, neighbors. She even started writing thank you cards early, just to stay ahead. What struck me was how convincing she was. It made me wonder, how long had she been like this? Was she always this way, even in college when we met? Or did something change? Some switch flip? Or had I just never looked hard enough? I began to remember moments from the early days that didn't quite make sense at the time. Little inconsistencies. She once told me she didn't drink, but then ordered a martini on our 3rd date like she'd done it 100 times. Another time, she claimed she was terrible with directions, but navigated a backroad shortcut through a town she'd never mentioned visiting. Back then, I thought they were quirks. Now I saw the pattern. She lied not just when she had to. She lied because it gave her power. But power only matters if no one else knows you're using it. So I let her keep it. For now. I remember one afternoon when we went to finalize the seating chart. She was scribbling on a big sheet of paper, shifting names around, frowning with fake stress. "We have to put Alex near the head table," she said. "He's your cousin. It would look weird otherwise." I watched her for a moment. She didn't look up, just kept moving names around. "You really care what people think, huh?" I asked. She shrugged. "Of course. Perception is everything." I nodded. "Yeah, it is." That night, I made a list. I titled it, Perception versus Reality. On one side, I wrote, what they see. On the other, what I know. Example. They see Kate laughing with my mom, talking about table linens. I know Kate was at a motel with Alex 3 nights ago. They see a perfect engagement photo on Instagram. I know she posted it minutes after deleting messages from her burner account. The list grew longer. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming reality. I needed to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I wasn't crazy. That the smiling woman in my house wasn't the person she pretended to be. One evening, I watched her stand in front of the mirror, practicing her vows. She said, "I promise to never walk away, even when things are hard." Then she looked at herself and smiled. I thought about how she walked out of my life every time she stepped into his car. She said, "I promise to always tell the truth, even when it's difficult." And I thought about the messages. The cover-ups. The backup plans. She said, I promised to grow with you, not away from you. And I knew she was already gone. But her lines were good. Convincing. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her again. And I think that's what terrified me most, that I was still vulnerable. That some part of me still wanted to believe this was salvageable. But it wasn't. Not anymore. One night, about a week before the rehearsal dinner, she handed me her phone to show me something, a picture of a cake design. I glanced at it, nodded. She turned away to refill her water, and for just a second, I saw the messages open behind it. Alex, you ready for round 2 this weekend? Kate, you bet. He's too distracted with guest lists to notice a thing. I took a screenshot with my phone the moment she stepped out. It was just another brick in the wall I was building. A wall I'd crush her with, piece by piece, in front of everyone she fooled. She had no idea I was getting stronger every day. No idea that the man sitting across the table, sharing dinner and small talk, was sharpening a blade. And the deeper I sank into her world, the more clarity I gained about mine. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was reclaiming control. And soon, very soon, she would see what happens when the mask slips and the lights stay on. 7 days. That's all that remained between Kate's dream wedding and the moment it would all fall apart. Funny how slow time moves when you're waiting for something big. Every hour felt like 100. Every conversation, a rehearsal. Every smile I gave her was another lie, another line in the script I'd been perfecting for weeks. I didn't just want to expose her, I wanted to do it flawlessly. She still had no idea. In fact, the final week brought out something strange in her. She became softer, more affectionate. She started sending little texts in the middle of the day, thinking of you, or can't wait to be your wife. I didn't respond to most. When I did, it was brief, me too, or a thumbs up emoji. The words caught in my throat sometimes, but I played the part. I had to. Every move I made now had weight. The rehearsal dinner was booked. The video was tested. The seating plan was final. Mia, our wedding planner, had the AV tech prepped for a special message from the groom. She didn't ask questions, just smiled and said she'd cue the lights when I gave the nod. I even practiced my speech. Not too long, not too dramatic. Just enough to hold attention, to keep the silence taut until the video played. I imagined the moment 100 times, Kate watching herself on screen, realizing too late that the walls had closed in. That her entire story, our entire story, had been rewritten, and this time, I was the one holding the pen. Leo was the only one who knew everything. He'd been checking in on me regularly, making sure I didn't spiral. I wasn't. I was calm. Almost frighteningly so. You sure you're okay? He asked one night as we sat in his car outside my house. I've never been clearer, I said. He nodded. Just be ready. You don't know how she'll react. I don't care how she reacts, I said. I care how everyone else reacts. And that was true. This wasn't just about Kate anymore. It was about the version of me they'd all been laughing at behind closed doors. The version who brought her roses and held her purse at the mall. The version who trusted too easily and questioned too little. That version was gone. The new me was surgical. On Tuesday, Kate's mom came into town. She stayed with us for 2 nights. The woman adored me. She gushed about how lucky Kate was, how she hoped we'd have 2 kids, maybe 3. Kate blushed and laughed and said, he's going to be such a good dad. I excused myself and went to the kitchen before I could say something cruel. The next morning, as her mom packed to leave, she pulled me aside and said, thank you for loving my daughter. You're the kind of man fathers dream their daughters will marry. I smiled and said, I just want her to be happy. God, the irony. Kate was giddy that week. I think part of her believed she'd won. She was juggling 2 lives, yes, but she had pulled it off. No one suspected. She had secured the wedding, the venue, the attention. She was in control. She even scheduled a spa day with her friends to relax before the big day. A bachelorette party, redux, she called it. I knew better. I checked the card statements. I knew where they were going. I even knew which bar Alex would meet them at after. She never said it outright, but I saw the text, he's clueless. Again, I screenshotted it. I saved it. But this time, I didn't get angry. I just felt hollow. Not numb. Not indifferent. Just done. I didn't love her anymore. That was the final gift this betrayal gave me. It severed the last string. On Thursday, we had our final rehearsal at the venue. We practiced walking down the aisle. Her dress wasn't there yet, but she twirled in an invisible gown and beamed at me. Soon, she whispered. Very soon, I said. Her bridesmaids were all smiles. My groomsmen laughed like everything was fine. I couldn't help but wonder how many of them knew. How many had seen something, heard something, and stayed silent. That night, we had dinner with both families at her parents' favorite restaurant. They'd reserved the back room. Toasts were made. Her father stood and said, "Mark, you're more than the man we hoped she'd marry. You're the man we needed her to find." Kate squeezed my hand under the table. I didn't flinch. Later, as we drove home, she said, "Tomorrow's going to be perfect." I looked out the window and said, "Yes, it will be." Friday morning arrived like thunder behind glass. I woke early, before Kate, watched her sleep for a minute. Then I got dressed and drove to the venue. The tech guy met me there. He loaded the video file. We tested it on the projector. The sound was clean. The video ran smoothly. At the end, that single line held like a final blow. "This is who she really is. I deserve better. We all do." Fade to black. He turned to me and said, "It's powerful." I nodded. "Make sure the volume's up." That afternoon, I packed a small duffel bag and left it in the trunk of my car. It held clothes, my passport, and a one-way ticket to another city. I wasn't sure where I'd go yet. I just knew I wasn't staying here. I went over the seating chart one more time, made sure the people who mattered most were positioned where they couldn't look away. I included her parents, her maid of honor, my cousin, everyone complicit, everyone blind. No one would escape the truth. The sun set slowly that night, like it knew what was coming. And when the rehearsal dinner began, I walked in wearing my best suit. Not for the wedding, for the funeral of a lie. I can still remember the smell of the room. It was some mix of catered hors d'oeuvres, perfume, and those candles they always put on tables to feel fancy. Someone was laughing near the bar. Wine glasses clinked. There was music playing, a soft instrumental track that Kate had picked for ambience. Everything looked perfect, and I was about to burn it all down. I stood near the entrance for a moment and watched her work the room. She was in her element, smiling, hugging people, introducing friends to family like she'd already won. Her dress wasn't white, but it might as well have been. She looked like the center of gravity in that room, and everyone was orbiting her. No one suspected a thing. I walked to the bar. Leo nodded at me from across the room. That was our signal. We were live. I clinked my glass. "Excuse me, everyone," I said. My voice was steady, strong. "Can I steal a moment before dinner is served?" People turned. Laughter faded. Phones went down. Someone muted the music. Kate turned around, glowing. I cleared my throat. "I wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here tonight to celebrate, to share, to support Kate and me as we get ready for what's supposed to be the happiest day of our lives." I looked around. Faces beamed. Kate was biting her lip like she was trying not to cry. I smiled. I say supposed to be because sometimes life hands you a gift wrapped in pain. Sometimes the truth shows up at your door uninvited, and instead of slamming it shut, you let it in. You let it sit with you. You listen. People were starting to frown. Kate shifted. And when that truth starts talking, it doesn't shut up. Nervous chuckles. Some people glanced at each other. That truth told me something important a few weeks ago. Something I couldn't ignore. It told me that love isn't always enough. That loyalty can be one-sided. That trust can be broken before vows are even spoken. Now people were looking at Kate. Tonight, instead of a toast, I'd like to share something else. Something real. Something I think everyone in this room deserves to see. Kate stepped forward. "Mark, what?" I raised a hand. "Please. Just watch." I nodded to Leo. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. It began with a hotel timestamp. June 3rd, 9:27 p.m. Security footage. Kate walking hand in hand with Alex through the lobby of a hotel, kissing him before entering the elevator. Then came the texts. Screenshots. Conversations between her and Alex. Between her and Chloe. Snippets of audio where she laughed about me. Called me predictable. Said she was locking it down for the benefits. Then photos. Her car parked outside his apartment overnight. A selfie she took in his hoodie. A shot of their names together on a restaurant reservation. Her face paled in the flickering light of her own betrayal. Murmurs rose around the room. Gasps. One woman covered her mouth. Kate's father stood up. The final frame was black with white letters. "This is not a mistake. This was a choice." Repeatedly. Then another. I didn't lose a partner. I dodged a bullet. And finally. "Thank you, Kate, for the best gift I never wanted." Silence. I turned the lights back on. Kate stood frozen, mouth open, eyes wide. Alex was already halfway to the door. Her parents looked like someone had gut-punched them. Chloe avoided eye contact. Leo was stone still. I took my glass. Now, I said, raising it, for those of you still hungry, there's a bar next door where the drinks are strong and the company's honest. You're all invited to my new event. A pause. My freedom party. And I walked out. Just like that. No yelling. No theatrics. Just the truth, and the sound of chairs scraping against floors as people tried to make sense of what they just saw. Outside, the night was warm, crisp, freeing. Leo followed me out, laughing under his breath. "Holy hell," he said. "You actually did it." I nodded. "I actually did." He slapped my back. "You okay?" I looked up at the stars. Took the deepest breath I'd taken in months. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." The next morning felt like waking up from a long, fevered dream. I slept at a quiet inn just outside of town, a place with no history, no ghosts. When I opened the curtains, the sun streamed in like it had been waiting for me to notice it again. I didn't feel victorious. Not exactly. But I didn't feel broken either. There was silence. Not the tense, bracing kind I had lived with for months, but peaceful silence. A kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. My phone was full, messages, missed calls, voicemails. I didn't open any of them. Not yet. Instead, I got in my car, rolled the windows down, and drove. No destination. Just movement. Just air. I ended up at the old park near my childhood home. The same place where I first rode a bike. The place where I'd gone after high school graduation, sat on a bench and planned my future with nothing but a notepad and wide-eyed hope. Funny. I'd thought I was on the right path then. I sat on that same bench now, older, less hopeful, but not bitter. Just aware. Sharp. Awake. And then my phone rang. It was Kate. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, her mom this time. Then Chloe. Then Alex. I silenced the phone. I already knew what they'd say. Kate would plead, cry, spin it as a mistake. Chloe might try to justify it. Alex, who knows? Maybe silence from him was the only honest thing he'd ever give me. Eventually, I did listen to one voicemail from my mom. Her voice was shaky. "Mark, I don't know what to say. We had no idea. I'm so sorry. Your dad's furious. Everyone's shocked. Call us when you're ready." That was enough for now. I checked social media. Kate's accounts were still up. Her engagement post was gone, replaced with silence. No updates. No explanations. Just a blank void where the fantasy used to live. I thought she might spin the story publicly, try to save face. But I underestimated her shame. Or maybe she was too busy dealing with the fallout. Because the fallout, it was big. Leo texted me later that day. Her parents pulled out of the venue contract. Her dad told Alex never to come near their family again. Chloe's been ghosted by half her friend group. I responded with one word. Good. The video, by the way, leaked. I didn't do it. But someone did. Within 24 hours, it made the rounds, not viral, but enough to reach the edges of our shared social circles. Enough for people to see who she really was. And people started reaching out. Some apologizing. Some just stunned. A few even admitted they'd suspected something for a while, but didn't know how to tell me. I didn't respond to most of them. What could I say? I was already living in a different chapter. 2 days later, I got a letter. Yes, a real letter, handwritten, sealed in an envelope. It was from Kate. She wrote 5 pages. She begged for understanding. She didn't deny anything, but tried to explain it all away as a mistake born of fear, pressure, confusion. She said she loved me, always had. That she was in a dark place and Alex just filled a gap. She ended with, "I'll never forgive myself, but if there's any part of you that can forgive me, even just a sliver, I'll spend my life earning it." I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer of a desk at the inn. I didn't burn it, but I didn't answer either. Forgiveness wasn't the point anymore. I had clarity. I had space. I had peace. That weekend, I booked a flight. Not to escape, but to start something new. A few cities were on my list. I picked one that felt right, not too far, not too familiar. I called it a reset. The day before I left, I walked back through our now empty venue. The staff let me in early. The room still smelled like flowers. The chairs were still stacked. The altar was bare. I stood in the middle, closed my eyes, and imagined her walking down the aisle. But this time, I didn't feel rage. I just felt relief. The wedding didn't end. It never began. And that might have been the greatest gift of all. 3 months. That's how long it had been since I walked out of that rehearsal dinner, and into a life I hadn't planned, but desperately needed. The city I moved to wasn't glamorous. It wasn't buzzing or booming. It was quiet, steady. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. Maybe that's why I chose it. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to someone else's timeline. There were no appointments for cake tastings, no discussions about floral arrangements or guest favors. No constant second-guessing. Just mornings, coffee, and the sound of a world that didn't demand anything from me. I rented a small apartment. One bedroom. Nothing fancy. But it had a balcony that caught the morning sun, and that was enough. I got a new job too, contracting work. Freelance consulting. Something I could control. Something that didn't come with someone else's shadow over my shoulder. Most days, I worked in a coffee shop around the corner. The baristas knew my name after a week. They asked questions like, "Where are you from?" and "Why'd you move here?" But I kept my answers short. I wasn't running anymore. I was settling in. Healing isn't loud. It's not fireworks or speeches or dramatic transformations. It's quiet. It's making your bed every morning. It's grocery shopping alone and not feeling lonely. It's remembering a painful memory and realizing it doesn't own you anymore. I stopped checking Kate's socials after the first month. At some point, I realized her life was no longer my business. She didn't follow me into this next chapter, and that was exactly how it needed to be. One evening in late spring, I sat outside my apartment, watching the sky turn soft purple. A woman walked her dog past me. She smiled. I smiled back. Nothing forced. No agenda. That was the night I realized I was happy, not in a fairy tale kind of way, not with grand gestures or poetic endings. Just content. It had taken betrayal to strip away the noise, to remind me that love built on lies isn't love at all. That commitment without character is a ticking clock. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, if I saw Kate today, I think I'd thank her. She didn't destroy my life. She freed it. People think revenge is the satisfying part. That moment when the curtain drops and the truth scorches the earth. But for me, it wasn't that. It was this. A quiet street. A good cup of coffee. A day with no lies. I didn't get married. I didn't get the wedding. But I got my life back. And freedom? Freedom looks good on me.